Katie Moore brought us the story of Laura Eugene, a woman who was freed after serving 20 years in prison for killing her abusive partner. Her release was made possible by criminal justice reform that have helped to cut the state's female prison population nearly in half. It took the work of a group of lawyers with Tulane University to help get Laura released on parole. And as Katie tells us tonight, there are many more survivors of abuse in prison that the group is working to help.
Davana Eugene has been looking for her mother since she was 5.
I remember looking for her at almost everything that I had. Graduation, high school graduation, prom, senior nights, I would look for her like knowing she wasn't coming.
Special life moments missed, starting in kindergarten. That's when her mother, Laura Eugene, got in one last fight with her father, David Fluence.
When the fights happened, they would split up, and then they would get back together, split up, get back together, that sort of thing.
Things regularly got violent between David and Laura.
I don't remember all of the abuse, but I remember abuse. So I knew that my mama didn't deserve this.
Police records show Laura called the police on David 6 times over the years. Davana's brothers remember the abuse vividly, especially what happened on September 4th, 2000.
David started beating on her. So I'm hearing the walls like boom, boom, like.
He threw me down the coffee table, choked me, so I couldn't barely breathe. So I realized that I got up and I went and got a knife and I stabbed Mr. Fluence.
A jury convicted Laura of murder and sentenced her to life in prison without parole. A year ago, Governor John Bel Edwards commuted her sentence to 99 years, making her parole eligible.
And I take full responsibility for my action, what I did to the family.
The board granted her parole just before Christmas. So for the first time in 20 years,
it felt like a dream come true.
the Eugenes hugged their mother outside prison walls.
There's nothing more rewarding as an attorney, of course, than to see a client who has spent decades in prison walk out of those prison gates.
Tulane Law School attorney Becky Kondakar took Laura's case on as one of the first for her newly formed Women's Prison Project 4 years ago.
But all the joy associated with those moments is always tempered by the recognition of everything that was lost to them and their loved ones and their children during those decades in prison.
Laura Eugene, were you there?
Yes, I wouldn't have missed it. I wouldn't have missed it.
I'll come in a minute.
Kondakar was the one holding the camera.
I want to record it.
You can hear her crying in the background.
The Women's Prison Project had gotten a multi-million-dollar grant to take a look at the cases of women serving long sentences in Louisiana prisons.
Really, we started with your list.
My list included 21 women I identified out of 138 who were serving life sentences in prison. Using court records and media reports, I found they had claimed they killed their abusive partners in self-defense, but were convicted of murder anyway.
There are some specific features of our state, I think, that make it particularly likely that survivors will be criminalized and wrongfully convicted for actions associated with their abuse.
Kondakar says the actual list is likely much longer than 21. But each case takes extensive research to figure out what really happened and how they can help under current law.
Cases that are old, there's no real good legal avenue to go back into court and say, hey, look, this was a wrongful conviction.
If Laura's conviction happened today, it would not be considered fair by the courts. But the law does not allow her to go back into court to appeal it. She was convicted by a non-unanimous jury, and attorneys for abuse survivors are now required to call experts to tell the jury about the effect repeated abuse has on their decision-making. Laura's trial attorney signed an affidavit saying he didn't do that.
And from our perspective, reviewing these cases and representing these clients from parishes all over the state, the reality is that these women are behaving rationally in the context of impossible choices.
They've been facing that basically domestic terror for a large part of their lives. The trials will still often focus on, well, do you know that he was going to kill her right in that moment?
The push to correct unjust or excessive sentences began in earnest with Governor Edwards' sweeping criminal justice reforms. That was around the same time the Women's Prison Project started. Since then, the attorneys have helped get 10 abuse survivors a second chance at freedom, through clemency like Laura and by asking prosecutors to take a second look at their cases. They're women like Candace Malone, who also was convicted by a non-unanimous jury and did not have experts in domestic violence testify at her trial.
I feel like the best way out for me sometimes would have been if I just allowed him to kill me, because it hurts thinking that I have to live the rest of my life like this. I didn't plan for this to happen. I didn't mean for this to happen. If I could take it back, I would just go back as far as to not having ever met him.
2 other abuse survivors on my original list had their cases reconsidered by Orleans Parish DA Jason Williams, Deborah Thomas, and Idosia Robinson. In all, 9 of these women have gotten out of prison since we started our reporting on the issue.
They don't deserve to live forever behind bars for defending themselves.
Our criminal legal system focuses on a snapshot in time. We need to be looking at the big picture.
A new law aimed at expanding Louisiana's self-defense claims to better consider domestic abuse situations failed to pass the legislature this year.
We talked to district attorneys' offices all across the state about these cases, and with a couple exceptions, we just haven't seen district attorneys' offices willing to take a second look at these older cases.
Devana Eugene will never have her father again, but having her mother back home is giving her some peace.
It pulls strings at my heart, because sometimes I find myself just staring at her, playing with them, you know. She gets them ready for bed. She's a big help with me.
And then there's this. When her daughter Ava graduated preschool this year, her mama was there.
I almost cried too, because like I said, my mom wasn't there for mine.
Devana is no longer looking for her mother in the distance, hoping for a miracle. She's looking at her across the living room, holding her grandbaby on the sofa, watching her own story told on the news as she lives it every day now, at home. Katie Moore, Eyewitness News.
We asked the governor's office for comment on this story and the large drop in the women's prison population, but they didn't get back to us.